Hello and welcome to WJTS Inform. Let's find out what happened this week in legislation in the Indiana House. As joining us is State Representative Mark Messmer, who is with District 63, or represents District 63. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here as always.
It's good to have you on Fridays. We want to point out that you will be joining, I think, Lyndall Hume tomorrow at the Chamber.
And Lloyd Arnold.
And Lloyd Arnold. He will be there, okay? That is at Vincennes University Jasper campus in the lecture hall put on by the Jasper Chamber of Commerce. So make sure you take part in that by joining them for that. We also will be airing that on Tuesday night. We broadcast it on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock here on WJTS. Well, Mark, let's get to the meat of the program today. There were a lot of bills went through the House this week, most of which just kind of flew through, but there were some that went on party lines.
Yeah, most of them were unanimous. We had 66 bills we passed final passage on this week of Senate bills, and of those 66, I would say 55 plus were unanimous. There was a few that had a few votes, against. But we had 3 bills that were, and really, this would be probably normal. Out of the 66, only 3 broke down on party line votes, and I mean, to me, they ended up being some of the most, probably some of the most interesting bills that we dealt with. That would have garnered a lot of attention over the past few weeks.
So when you say party line, you mean all the Republicans voted for it and all the Democrats voted against it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about those 3 bills.
Okay. Well, the first one was basically demand-side management programs. There's a program called Energize Indiana that every utility payer, you probably don't know it, but the average utility payer probably pays $2 to $4, per utility bill across 1 million ratepayers across the state of Indiana per month. Industrial customers pay, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per month into this program to turn around and give you free light bulbs.
Okay.
And that program will continue, but it's going to allow the large industrial customers to opt out and develop their own demand-side management programs, because if you're a heavy electric user, industrial user, you have a vested interest in making sure you're already doing energy efficiency programs to make sure your operational costs are as low as possible. Why wouldn't you? It's the bottom line on your production. And then it's going to set up and require an audit of the Energize Indiana program. They've spent billions of dollars and there's no audit trail. And so we just thought it was time to make them reviewable and allow the large industrial clients to opt out and do their own program.
Okay.
But why that was party line, I don't know.
And these 3 bills we're talking about are now going to go to the Senate, right? They
were Senate bills.
Okay, so now they're going to be they're passed their law. Okay. Or they will.
If there was changes that they might go to conference committee possibly, if we tweak them in the House in a way that the Senate didn't like. If they came through unamended, then they'll go from the House straight to the governor. If they were amended, they might go to conference committee. Or if we changed it, then the Senate could concur, vote on it one more time, and it's passed.
Okay. Another one of those bills that went party line this week was voting. It was having to do with voting.
It's a multitude of different voter registration, election day, all centered around integrity of the voting process. If there's discrepancies in voter registration forms requiring what the clerk has to do to try to fill in gaps on a voter registration, requiring signatures be the signature card that you sign, make sure it's scanned and part of the poll book. When you go to vote on election day, if the signatures don't match, are you really the person you say you are? And if there's fraudulent activity, in that signing in of the poll worker, it makes it a felony conviction for the person who commits voter fraud, on election day, and just tightens up the rules on inspection of ballots. I mean, all just centered around voter integrity. Made some tweaks to, a lot of the electronic voting that happens at the polling sites, especially with the advent of the vote centers that are become more and more more common across the state. Just tightening up the integrity of the process, and unfortunate that would have been a party line vote, why anybody wouldn't be concerned about making sure the people that vote are who they say they are, that they are truly registered to vote, that there's no fraud. We're trying to just eliminate ways that people commit fraud in the system. And that one passed, straight party line vote as well. So, but I don't know that may go to conference committee. Not sure. I don't know that we had any amendments that got approved on the floor. Might have been some in committee, but if so, it did pass out of the House strongly enough that it'll go back to the Senate now. And the third bill that really has gotten a lot of attention in the last couple of years was getting Indiana out of the Common Core standards. There's about 90% of what's in Common Core that I'm certain we'll adopt anyway, because if it's standards that are college, and what we renamed it was college readiness standards, because if our kids are going to college, they're going to have to take the SAT or the ACT tests. They're going to have to take national standardized testing. We want to make sure that they're prepared for that, and if there's content that goes along with that, we'll make sure we're having an education standard that is as good or better than Common Core, to where our kids are able to be as prepared as they can for either the workforce leaving high school or going to college. And that one broke down on a party line vote as well, which it shouldn't have. I mean, why we don't think Indiana can write a better standard than what the feds can give to us seems pretty obvious to me. Let's take what we like. That one polled very high on my pre-session survey. Pick what we like out of it. If there's stuff we think's inappropriate or not age specific for the younger students, let's take what we know works and do our own thing.
Common Core is nationally starting to get some. I mean, Indiana's not the only state doing this.
Several have dropped out. I mean, the initial push was when it was sold to the governors at one of the national governors conventions. This is going to be a way we can have, and in theory, it's a good idea. We can have, a set of standards that's adopted across the country, and oh, by the way, we're going to be able to save you $10 per student on your standardized, testing. And so the governor said, I can save money. You bet, I'm in. Not one of them read what was in the Common Core standards when they all opted in. But as people read into it, we started implementing parts of it. We started seeing things that really didn't work too well. And then when you don't like it and you need to change it, where do you go? Mm-hmm. No, I mean there's no way for us to control and change what we wanted. If we were part of that Common Core group. So that one passed strongly, and the governor supports it. So yeah, that one will be done with. It'll take a year or two to get everything implemented and get our standards finished. That they have started to write their own. The Board of Education had already started this process, anticipating that's what the governor wanted and where we would go. So,
okay, so that's going to be signed and,
yep.
and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now there were 4 bills that you were involved in
mm-hmm.
that went really easily
mm-hmm.
through the House, and let's talk about those. First of all, had to do with serving alcohol at the state fair.
Yep, that was one that came through the Public Policy Committee. I wasn't an author on the bill, but the testimony in committee was very logical, very compelling. The state fair board can sell alcohol on the fairgrounds 50 weeks out of the year, but the 2 weeks of state fair they couldn't. And I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but in 1946, the event that caused them somebody got mad because they ran out of beer cups. They started serving beer by the bottle, and some people made a mess with the glass. And so the following year, somebody came in and said, "We want to take care of that. No alcohol during state fair week." So it was just a matter of striking that prohibition. It'll be done in a very controlled setting. You'll have to be 21 to enter. Not too much unlike the beer garden at Strassenfest. Mm-hmm. You can't take beer out. You can't take beer in. It'll be 21 and older, and it'll be set up to feature Indiana farm wineries and Indiana microbreweries. I mean, that's going to be the intent, is to feature its value-added agricultural products from the state of Indiana, and that'll be. Their plans are now to make it, focused on, on featuring Indiana manufactured goods there. So
Okay.
I think that passed easily, 75 to 20. Another one was the agricultural trespass. That was a bill we tried to work on last year. It really got tangled up with some issues on freedom of speech, because it dealt with, do you video something, when you're on an ag property, and then, what do you do with distribution of that? We took anything to do with videoing and recording. All of that is out of the bill. It was strictly, if you are in a building on an agricultural property and don't have permission to be there, it's trespass, and they raised it to some felony levels. And if you commit any kind of damage when you're there, then criminal mischief penalties were raised as well. So just boiled it down to, if you're not on your property, I think you know it, and if you're not on somebody else's property without permission, I think you know it. Mm-hmm. And just got it down to strictly trespass and criminal mischief when you're there, and passed quite easily. That was really a bipartisan supported as well.
Another bill that went through, it surprised you because it went through so well, was the charter school bill.
Right. There are charter schools that operate across the state, primarily in the urban areas, where the public schools haven't done so well in the past. And you might be a charter school operator that has 3 or 4 school buildings in an area. It allows them to operate those buildings as a group, and they receive their funding just like if you had 5th Street, 10th Street, the middle school, Ireland, the high school. The school corporation gets their money as a block, and then they spend it at the individual buildings and with the individual grades, as they need. And it allows those charter school operators to function, in that same area. If they've got a group of schools, they can operate them, as a lump, and then spend the money at the individual buildings as they need. And that passed 86 to 6. So really a strong bipartisan bill, probably the first charter school bill that I think we've ever done that got strong bipartisan support. So it was kind of nice to see that.
Okay, and we have talked about having to do with Crane, the base economic
development
buffer.
Yep.
Okay.
The buffer zone bill that did pass final passage in the Senate unanimously, and the levy bill that I had authored the first half passed unanimously both this week in the Senate, and one that I had sponsored in the House was allowing for local units of government to be involved with economic development projects, on military bases, and it could be a base like Crane, it could be a National Guard base, it could be basically any type of military, and that could be money spent for economic development projects on those facilities, or money spent in support of kind of an anti-base realignment commission, things to promote and support efforts to defend your base, when that process comes along in a few years. So that bill passed unanimously, Senate Bill 260 in the House this week. So that one's off to the governor's desk for signature.
Now let's talk about how, basically, we're done with new bills.
We will finish final passage of the last about 50 bills that we'll have on Monday. Okay. We have Senate bills, and they've got probably an equal amount in the Senate of House bills. Monday, Tuesday, that'll all start wrapping up. And then we begin from there till March 14th, we have what's called conference committee time. So if bills changed in either chamber, if somebody changed my bill and I didn't like the changes, I can sign what they call a dissent motion. Or if I agree with their changes, then I sign a concurrence motion.
Okay.
And if it was changed, it's still got to go back to the House of Origin and be revoted one more time, because it's got to pass both chambers in the identical form. So the next 2 weeks, we might be in for an hour, we might break for 2 hours to work on conference committees, then come back for an hour. I mean, it'll be Tuesday through the following Friday. The schedule's very erratic.
Well, this seems a little different than we've had in some years in the past, where it seems like there was just bills right up to the very end that were being discussed. Obviously the one that will probably get discussed and adjusted until the very end will be whatever they do with business personal property, whether it ends up a study committee, whether it ends up, like the House version or Senate version. That bill will probably be tweaked and pushed and pulled, up until the end. And more than likely, that'll be one of the latest things we do. And most of the bills, we're trying to work with the House and Senate authors to make sure, as bills are getting adjusted,
you know what's happening with it, so when, if it does get changed, it can come back and you can concur
Pretty quickly.
pretty quickly, and minimize the amount of, the conference committee time can get kind of crazy, and we try to minimize the amount of that piles up, on that last day, but it eventually we do end up with a handful of them that are right up to the wire.
Okay, well, Mark, thank you very much for coming
Okay,
in.
you're
And
welcome.
you'll be back again next Friday, and then probably the Monday after that, because the way
The
things work.
14th would be our last day of session, unless we get done early. Keep my fingers crossed on that.
It might be a great year for that. All right, Mark, thank you very much. Our guest has been Mark Messmer. He is State Representative for District 63. Thank you for watching WJTS Informed. We are local people watching local people.